Kiss Mafia, welcome. Always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for joining me. Today, I'm going to talk about what it means to be a Kiss fan, because it's kind of something only hardcore Kiss fans can understand. So I want to sort of try to break it down and explain it the best I can, because, I like lots of bands, but there's something different here. And what is it? It needs to be explored. So I'll start off by saying I liked Kiss before I even ever heard Kiss. So, what do I mean? Obviously, they're a visual band. And I remember as a kid, I had older cousins that were into Kiss. And I just remember seeing the album cover and the back cover and the gatefold, the inside of Kiss Alive 2. And this picture of Gene Simmons and the whole band, I'm like, wow, that looks pretty fantastic. I gotta know more about these guys. And then I open up the gatefold and this is just an all-time picture of a rock concert in 1977, nonetheless. We got to remember that, these visual effects, these things, they weren't really a big part of music at the time. We take it for granted today. Like everybody that goes on tour, every band, every hip-hop, country star, whatever it might be, they have stage shows. That's a big part of it. It's not just someone on stage singing music. So Kiss in the 70s, they decided that they wanted to be the band they had never seen, right? That's kind of cool. Think about that. There's something we want, doesn't exist. Let's create it. So that's what they did. That's what they set out to do. And they took it to a whole other level. Like, yeah, you had Alice Cooper, had some cool stage effects. You had other bands doing things, but Kiss just took it beyond. And that's a big part of who they are. And like I said, today we take for granted that most of these shows that you go and see, that's a big part of it, is the visuals and everything else that goes on there. So I liked it before I even heard it, but obviously that's not enough. You can't last for 50 years on flash pods and cool imagery. I listened to the music and it turns out I like that too. And I felt that the music matched the theater, was very bombastic as well. So it's all about the music. At the end of the day, it is. Sure, lots of bands have gimmicks and things and whatnot. They all do, right? Like AC/DC Angus Young has been doing the schoolboy thing forever. We don't think twice about it, right? But, it's a gimmick of sorts. It's something. It's just the way bands present themselves, right? It's all image. I mean, if we think about it, it's always been there. You have the style over substance argument. There's a reason that Motley Crue has outsold Rush. Pragmatically speaking, Rush is a much better band. But they didn't fit the image like, Motley Crue did, So anyways, it's always been a part of it. That's the reason I bring it up, is because that's always been a big knock on Kiss. People that don't know much about them say they're just a gimmick band, but like I said, you can't last over 5 decades on a gimmick. It just doesn't work. There has to be something there. So the visuals drew me in, but the music kept me there. And, the thing about them too, they're not just band members. They're like individual superheroes, right? Gene's the blood-spitting, fire-breathing demon. Ace Frehley, the spaceman, right, from outer space, whose guitar, flashes and shoots fireworks. Then you got Paul Stanley, the Star Child, the real. He's a star, man. He's a front man. He is the Star Child. And Peter Criss, the Catman, who always had 9 lives, and he had the levitating drum riser, and Paul Stanley would fly across the arena. So they were just larger than life. And everyone kind of had their own. I was a demon guy growing up. Obviously, first seeing Gene Simmons and that picture on Alive 2 was just like, wow, what is that? It's sort of out of this world. And he was my guy, but I liked them all. And they all have different personalities and different, followers and followings and stuff like that. So it's kind of cool that they really kind of all have their own thing that separates them. So they're a band, all as one, but they have such individual personalities that I think maybe because of the makeup and everything else that in the characters that people dive deeper into than they would with other bands. So that's a big part of it. And, we can't talk about Kiss without talking about the merchandise. Gene Simmons has always said unapologetically that he wants to be a Kiss brand, not, like a rock brand, not just a band. So, some people don't like that. Gene can be a little divisive at times, but I like him because I just think he speaks from the heart. He doesn't pull punches. Yeah, we're in this to make money. We're in this to, live an amazing life, which they are. So, the merchandise is out of this world. Like, for example, I've got tons of it myself. I'm lucky over the years. I've been to places and picked some stuff up. They got trading cards. I mean, how many rock bands have their own trading cards? Not many, I would say. Obviously they have everything from mugs, coasters, of course, right? I have the original thermos, but I don't have the lunchbox. One of these days, maybe I'll come across it. Some of these items are really, really hard to find. Games, everything, action figures, they've got it all. In fact, I'm going to give a little shout out to John Five of Motley Crue's new guitarist. He has a site, an Instagram page called Knights in Satan's Service, which, back in the day, that's what KISS was called by the media, KISS, Knights in Satan's Service. And he is like one of the biggest KISS collectors in the world, and especially of rare items. He's got some amazing stuff. He's worth a follow. Huge, huge KISS fan. And yeah, nice guy. I actually got to meet him outside of the KISS's final show in Madison Square Gardens years ago. And he was very gracious. So, the merchandise is one thing, but again, it has to go beyond that. It is more than that. This might sound weird, but there's a lot of life lessons in KISS. So, for example, first of all, they're inspirational characters. Let's get into them. Let's get into Gene and Paul. Gene, his mom, Holocaust survivor, brought her only child to America to give him a better life, and he never took that for granted. He worked his ass off to make his dream come true. Paul Stanley was born was missing an ear and couldn't hear in one ear, and had to grow his hair out to cover it, and somehow just overcame those things. So I always found them to be very genuine, and they overcame obstacles to get to where they are. It wasn't given to them; they earned it, right? And I do draw some inspiration from that. One of the other things I've learned is that you like what you like, unapologetically as well. Like, being a KISS fan in the 80s, it wasn't cool. Like, when I was growing up, KISS was passé. I remember I telling my teacher, I got the new KISS album this week. And it's like, KISS was old when I was young. And, they weren't the thing anymore. They were so huge in the 70s that, when the 80s came along, but I didn't care. I liked it. I didn't have to convince people why. I just did. And if they didn't like it, that was cool. In my mind, you're missing out because there's some good stuff here. So it wasn't always easy being a KISS fan, but you gotta stand by what you like, right? You can't pretend. People know if you're being genuine or not, right? You can't pretend to be something you're not. And that's again what I like about KISS. They don't hide the fact. Gene doesn't hide the fact that he wants to be a rock brand, as I said. I mean, to the point where probably one of the most over-the-top items that they've ever produced is the KISS casket. So the KISS casket it's a casket that you can be buried in, and it's got KISS imagery all over the sides and the top, and it actually even has an MP3 player inside that will play KISS music until the battery dies. So you're buried listening to KISS. It's kind of cool, actually. Like, who else has that? Like I said, other bands don't have coffins and collectibles and all these kinds of things. Dimebag Darrell from Pantera was a big KISS fan. He got buried in the KISS coffin, and they have condoms, they have everything. So yeah, they'll sell everything, but they don't hide behind it. Yeah, this is what we do. This is what we're trying to accomplish. So there's something special about meeting other KISS fans. And over the years, I've been to the conventions, the cruises, and things like that, and you get to meet with people that have the KISS obsession. And when you meet them, you're gonna lock in. You're gonna be there for a while. You're gonna be talking about a lot of stuff. Even the formation of the KISS Army, which was just two teenagers, Bill Starkey, Jay Evans, in Terre Haute, Indiana, were upset that their local radio station wasn't playing KISS. So they went ahead and got a letter campaign and would show up outside of there protesting, and the DJ famously called them the KISS Army. So, of course, now we have the KISS Mafia as well, and you can be members of both people, not a problem. So there's a whole culture there. When you meet people, what's great about it is that again, Kiss has been around for over 50 years. So the the catalog of music is that it's so vast. There's so many different eras. There's so many things to talk about. Like, I grew up in the 80s. I'm a fan of the 80s Kiss. A lot of people are. The 70s people are not. And I understand that. Yeah, I think you can be a fan of everything. You don't have to pick and choose. But there's, they had their hard rock era in the early 70s. Then they went very disco and pop. And then they sort of went more heavy in the 80s. And they've sort of done it all, just sort of moving with the times. They've kind of done it their own way. They didn't necessarily try to follow the trends of sector. You could argue that, they tried to go a little more disco-y and poppy in the late 70s, early 90s. But overall, they just sort of always did it their way. And I respect that. So there's a lot to like there. There really is. And when you go to these, like, how many bands have conventions or cruises? I know some do, but like when you show up to a Kiss cruise, there's going to be people from around 33 countries there, which is pretty amazing to meet people from the Kiss Army in Brazil and Sweden, and it's just everywhere, Germany, all over the world. It's unbelievable. It's an international phenomenon. And I was fortunate enough in the 90s to go to these conventions that they used to have where, you could meet the guys that were selling the merchandise. There'd always be, somebody related to Kiss. Like, I got to meet Bill O'Coin, one of their early managers who really propelled them. Vinnie Vincent, one of their former band players. Like, the tribute bands, the Kiss tribute bands are unreal. I've seen so many of them over the years, and there's so many that exist. It's pretty amazing. It is. And the tattoos are unbelievable. Some of the tattoos I've seen, go online and look up Kiss tattoos. Put in Kiss the band tattoos. Otherwise you might get something a little off. That's all good. And just like how many bands have people covering their whole back in like the Destroyer album and the Kiss artwork and all those things, right? It's pretty amazing. Like I said, Kiss were such superheroes in the 70s with their individual personas that they actually, Marvel Comics came along and said, hey, we need to put together a Kiss comic. And I'm lucky enough, again, in my travels and those old conventions, I was able to pick that up. And I still have it. It's still in great shape. It's one of my prized possessions. So the collection aspect, the camaraderie, the conventions and the cruises and coming together to celebrate Kiss 50 plus years later is amazing. Really, like I said, I don't know that other bands have stuff like this. There's so much to it. It's the music first and foremost in my mind, because without that you have nothing. But there's so much else, right? It's such it's a family, right? It is. There's something when you meet other Kiss people, it's just something special. It is. You can talk about. I can talk about other bands with people, but it's different. It's just there's a different vibe altogether, and I love it. I like what I like. You like what you like, and it's great. Kiss has been there for me. Like, I don't remember not being a Kiss fan. That's the amazing thing about it too. And like I said, I like lots of other music. There's lots of other bands. I like lots of different styles of music. I'm basically a hard rock guy, but Kiss has been there. Like, we've all had ups and downs, good times, bad times. Kiss is like an old friend. They're just there. Like, have there been periods of time where I sort of go away from listening to Kiss? Yeah, but nothing too extended, and even if I do, like I said, coming back to it is like coming back to an old friend. It's different. Like, I could go years without listening to certain bands, but Kiss has been there, through a lot, through my whole life. Like, it's wild. My wedding song was a Kiss song, and it was the soundtrack of my life growing up as a kid, a teenager, all the way through. It's just always been there, and I think that's pretty special. And you know what? I'll say this. I just hope that for you, as whoever's watching, that you have something that you're as passionate about as I am about Kiss. Because, and if you're not, I hope you find something, because it brings a lot of joy to my life. Like, it really does. It might sound weird to say, but Kiss brings a lot of joy to my life. It's something that's always been there. And here I am all these years, 40 plus years later, I've decided to sit down and talk to a camera with a bunch of Kiss stuff behind me. Not even sure if anyone's going to listen, but it's just, I'm doing it for me and I'm liking it a lot more than I thought I would. So it's great, and I thank you for even a minute of your time to be here to listen to it. But you know, the heart wants what the heart wants, and I've always liked Kiss. That's it. So thanks again. Hopefully we'll see you soon, Kiss Mafia. Have a good one.